On today's episode, we have a little rapid fire for you coming off this holiday weekend with some random topics that have been submitted to us through the mailbag that didn't quite make a full mailbag episode, but had some interesting topics nonetheless that we should discuss. We also have an update with a local company here in Ohio that I have talked about quite a bit that has sold recently and what you need to know about that and more on today's episode of Tackle Talk.
Hello, everybody. I'm Bill Dance, and you're listening to Tackle Talk.
This is the Tackle Talk Podcast, brought to you by American Legacy Fishing and Outdoors. World-class fishing gear, unmatched personal service. Now, here's your host, Andrew Hayes.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Tackle Talk Podcast. As always, we are brought to you by American Legacy Fishing and Outdoors, and we are coming off of Labor Day. That means that there are great sales to be had over at AmericanLegacyFishing.com. If you go to the website, the first thing you're going to see is 40% off select used gear. That is awesome considering that the regular prices of their used gear are already worth it and save a ton of money off of regular MSRP on this gear. Now you're getting an extra 40% off select items on the website. So that is worth checking out. They also have 25% off select Dobbins rods. If you're in the market for a Dobbins rod, go check and see if the rod you're looking for is 25% off right now. They also have 50% off all in stock Berkeley. So that is a killer deal, half off. You don't have to do any sort of buy one, get one free or any sort of qualifications or anything. 50% off all in stock Berkeley right now in time for fall fishing. Go check that out. They also have a ton of other things over there. They do have the Elite Evo tungsten chatterbaits in and a ton more over at www.americanlegacyfishing.com. And as always, you can use code TACKLETALK5. That's going to get you an extra 5% off your entire purchase, whether that's regular priced items, whether that's sale items. It's stackable, an extra 5% just for listening to the show. We're here to save you money, and American Legacy Fishing helps us do that with code TACKLETALK5 over at www.americanlegacyfishing.com. Okay, folks, the first thing that we have to talk about here is a little bit of a bummer, but I feel like I owe it to you guys to give you guys sort of a heads up on this. Jig Masters, the company that I have talked about time and time again on Tackle Talk. I love them. They are out of Northern Ohio. Cody Jennings up there that started Jig Masters makes great gear, whether it's jigs, spinner baits, buzz baits, terminal, you name it. He does a great job. Well, I have some sad news. Unfortunately, Jig Masters has sold. So Cody Jennings, the gentleman that I just talked about, the gentleman that I have become friends with, and I have worked with him and collaborated with him on a couple different projects and baits and things like that, he no longer owns Jig Masters. So I think that's important to tell you all because over the past, 4, 5, 6 years or so, I've been a big proponent of Jig Masters. And a big reason why I was a big proponent of Jig Masters was Cody Jennings. He has that engineering background. He's a stickler for quality. I knew him. I knew he cared about the products. I trusted Cody, whether that be working with him on bait designs or just buying baits through him in general. Well, now all of that, I guess, could change. I don't know anything. I wish them all the best, obviously. I want to see small companies continue to thrive, but the lady I think now that owns it, that seems to have bought it from Cody, I do not know her at all. I don't know their background. I don't know if they even fish or if they came from a fishing background, or I have no idea, right? I just am very disconnected now with who owns Jig Masters. So that's just sort of a really quick PSA here, is that I guess I just want to be pretty clear that I can no longer feel comfortable, vouching for the quality or, what's going on over at Jig Masters. There's been kind of like a very close relationship over the past, 3, 4, 5 years as I've gotten to know Cody, and I have recommended Jig Masters gear to a lot of people because of that. So I'm not saying don't go buy it anymore. Go buy Jig Masters, go support small companies. I just want to be very clear that now I am not going to be able to vouch for it as much as I did before because I don't know the people that own it now. I don't know their plans. I don't know what they're going to do, if they're going to change things. I just don't know. So with that being said, I know there are thousands and thousands of you out there that have bought micro buzzes from Jig Masters over the past couple years since we worked with Cody to design that micro buzz bait. Well, I'm guessing that Jig Masters is going to continue to make those. I hope they don't change anything, but I've seen kind of some posts or some murmurs or something that some new colors will be coming out, and I don't know if that means that there are changes or new versions coming, or I have no idea. But I just want to be clear that I have no connection to the Microbuzz anymore. I helped Cody make it originally, but now I have no idea what is going to happen with it in the future. Again, I wish Jig Masters all the best, but I am no longer attached to the Microbuzz or to Jig Masters at all. So I have no more say in what happens with the Microbuzz. Now, with that being said, do not fret. I am in the very early stages of working with a company that I know and, I trust and I want to work with going forward to bring the next iteration of the Microbuzz with some upgrades and continue to make it better and to still have a hand in this design, and then some other things moving forward that we're really excited about. But I can't tell you all the details right now. Hopefully in the next, couple months or so, I'll be able to start talking a little bit about this, but we are in conversations right now to work with a great company to continue to bring you that small micro buzzbait that is overbuilt, that is awesome, that you can throw those buzz grubs on that we've talked about time and time again on this show. Fingers crossed, I am working on it. I just wanted to give you that quick PSA. Jig Masters has sold, but again, we wish them all the best. We hope they continue to keep killing it and keep making great products. Okay, next up here, we are going to get into some rapid fire. So we've done this a couple times before on the show. Again, I'm not going to take up a ton of your time. I know we're coming off a holiday weekend. I'm recording this right now on Labor Day. I hope you guys had a great Labor Day and you got to enjoy time with the family and time outside and grilling and maybe going fishing and all that kind of stuff. I hope you had a great long weekend, but we don't take plays off here at Tackle Talk just because it is a holiday. Does not mean that you don't get an episode when you wake up on Tuesday. So we're going to hit some rapid fire here. I've got some topics from things that were submitted to the mailbag, but didn't quite make it onto a mailbag episode, but were great topics that I think would be really fun to discuss. And I think there's going to be a little bit of like quote unquote hot takes in here, just looking at the list that I have in front of me. So the first thing here, let's start off with like a good one, something that you might be able to take something away from. The first one here on rapid fire says tips for buzzbaits. So if I'm going to give you tips for buzzbaits, I think that's probably fitting, I guess. We just talked about the Microbuzz and some other things. So one of the things I will say is do not be afraid of a trailer hook. A trailer hook can be your best friend on a buzzbait, especially if you're throwing more of a traditional buzzbait where you don't have a soft plastic on the back end of that and you just have the skirt and you have an open hook. I throw trailer hooks on my big buzzbaits, like 3/8 ounce and up, all the time. I do it on spinnerbaits too. It's just a great way to make sure that you're not getting short struck and you're capitalizing on those fish, especially with a buzzbait where you have some fish that will come up and sort of swipe at it or try and attack it and just may or may not get that single hook. You have another hook back there to capitalize on those fish that might not have the best aim. So trailer hooks should be something that you consider a lot of the time with a buzzbait. I also think, again, I've said this a lot here on the show, that there is a lot to be said for ripping that skirt off and not having a skirt on your buzzbait. So if that means buying a buzzbait without a skirt or getting a skirted buzzbait and just ripping it off. But I think that is a look that fish see less often and has served me well over the years when I've really ditched that silicone skirt. Now, that means that you can also play around with your trailer. So whether you rip the skirt off or not, although I would recommend ripping it off, then you get to play around with adding a trailer on that back hook. And with buzzbaits, the cool part about a buzzbait is that trailer can make such a difference in how that buzzbait runs. So if you're throwing like a shad profile on the back versus a straight tail, more like a spunk shad or something, versus a creature bait or a craw that has more flapping appendages on it, versus a grub, versus a frog or a horny toad or something like that, you can get that buzzbait to work at a lot of different speeds because some of those plastics will create more lift than others. So think like more flappy plastics on the back. So if you do a rage crawl or you do a big creature bait or something like a horny toad that's got like a lot of movement back there and you got a lot of kick to it, sometimes that can help keep that buzzbait up a little bit. Or if you want to be able to burn it fast and still keep it down a little bit and you want something a little bit more streamlined, that's when you go to fluke or a spunk shad or, a mooch minnow or something like that, right? You can play around with that a lot, but don't be afraid of getting really creative with your soft plastic choice. Another thing you shouldn't be afraid of is throwing throwing a buzzbait on fluorocarbon. Fluorocarbon is one of those things, I think it obviously just gets written off most of the time for topwater, but with a buzzbait, it can make sense. I throw buzzbaits a lot on big, 15 to 20 pound fluorocarbon because I'll just use my Texas rig or my jig rod and I'll tie a buzzbait on it because the buzzbait is not floating, which means that the only reason it's staying up is because of the tension of that line, which means you don't really have to worry about whether your line floats or sinks. It doesn't really matter. So fluorocarbon has very little stretch. It's practically invisible. So if you're throwing that buzzbait in really clear water, you don't have to worry about that with big honking braid attached to this thing. There's just a lot of reasons why you shouldn't really shy away from fluorocarbon with buzzbaits. Another thing I would say is maybe look at lighter buzzbaits. I know, like we talked about, the micro buzz is a good example of that, but there are a ton of great light buzzbaits on the market. It doesn't have to be small, just light in general, because the lighter a buzzbait is, usually that means the slower you can work it and it will stay up. So the heavier a buzzbait gets, obviously you can cast it a lot farther. If it's windy or things like that, there's some great things there, but you have to reel it a little bit faster to keep it up on the water sometimes. With a lighter buzzbait, you can get that lift a little bit easier, which means if you're trying to really slow roll it, you don't always need these big half ounce, 3/8 ounce buzzbaits. You can look for something in a 1/4 ounce or somewhere around there. And the last thing is my biggest buzzbait fish, I feel like, I don't know if this is true or not, but just right off the top of my head, I can think of a lot of big fish that I've caught on a buzzbait that specifically was a buzzbait that had a clacking element to it. So Booyah is a good example of a great cheap buzzbait that has a clacker on it. Now, I feel like sometimes the number of bites I get with a clacking buzzbait is a little bit less, but it seems like the quality of fish jumps up a little bit when you have that big obnoxious clacker on there. So I don't know if that's scientifically true or not, but I feel like I just generate bigger bites a lot of times with a clacking buzzbait. Also, color choice, black, white, silver. I feel like that's really all you need. You can go more adventurous if you want to, but I do the staples with almost all of my top waters in general. It's like bone, black, and silver, and you're good to go. All right, let's get to our next topic here in rapid fire. The next one says Ben Milikin. Okay, if I'm being honest, I don't really watch a lot of fishing YouTube, and I know that might sound silly, but when I get the chance to kind of turn my brain off and I want to watch YouTube, a lot of times I'm fishing out at that point because I'm sitting here doing the show, I'm editing, I'm, doing pre-production stuff for the show, and sometimes I just want to turn my brain off and watch sports, I want to watch concerts or things like that, so I don't really watch a ton of fishing YouTube, and then I'll go one further. When I did watch a lot of fishing YouTube, which just would have been back probably 10 years ago or so, Ben Milikin was not really one of the ones that I watched a lot of times. He just wasn't my kind of cup of tea back then. I don't know. I feel like I gravitated more toward, if it was SB Fishing or Mikey Balls or some of those other people. Back then, Ben wasn't really one of the channels that I was watching, and he hasn't always been my cup of tea, but I will tell you what, for me, the great equalizer is, can you catch him? And Ben Milikin can catch him. That's plain and simple, period, end of discussion. I have a lot of respect for Ben, especially the last probably 3 or 4 years, because Ben did what a lot of these guys won't do, like the actual YouTubers, is he put his money where his mouth is, and he tried to compete at the highest level in fishing. And you can't do that if you're one of these YouTubers that really kind of hides the ball and wants to put on this facade of being able to catch fish without really being a hammer or being a stick. I think a lot of people on YouTube have these sort of ways around it to make it look like they are awesome anglers, but at the end of the day, they're just kind of like you and me. I mean, there's a lot of ways you can do that. There's selective editing, obviously, which everybody on YouTube does, but there's also a lot of collaborating with people, quote unquote, where basically that means you get to go travel and fish with someone else that will probably put you on the juice and knows what they're doing on that fishery. Or you see a lot of people that are really trying to hide the fact that they are on private water and they are fishing areas that you and I cannot fish, and it's just a little bit easier of a time, or they're going back to these same places over and over again that they have permission to fish. Or you have a lot of people that are fishing HOA ponds and all that kind of stuff, stocked areas, where Ben Milikin was out there on the Bassmaster Opens and then the Bassmaster Elite Series, and he's out there competing with the best of the best. And I really respect that. I think that is one of those things that he sort of put his money where his mouth is, and I think that is very, very cool. So hats off to Ben Milikin. You can learn a lot from watching Ben fish. Okay, the next topic we have here says ICAST. and there's no context. It just says ICAST. ICAST in general, I'm going to say ICAST is one of those things that sort of loses a bit of its magic every year. At least that's what it seems like. It seems like the first year that I went, it was like, oh my gosh, heaven on earth. I can't believe I've never been here. This is the coolest thing I've ever seen. And then you go back the second year and you're like, yeah, this is still really, really awesome. You go back the third year and you're like, this is still super cool. I look forward to this every year, but it's not like it was year one or year two because you're seeing a lot of repeat stuff at ICAST if you go every single year. And then I feel like every year that goes on, it just sort of wears out the magic of ICAST a little bit. And there's that other side of things where, yes, we get more jaded every year. The industry is getting a little bit more negative every year. And when you go to ICAST, you're kind of getting a peek behind the curtain and you're seeing the Wizard of Oz back there. And you're like, oh, that's not really what I thought it would be. You kind of see how the sausage is made with marketing and with bait rollouts and with rod and reel rollouts. And you see these people that are giving you these canned speeches and these anglers that are told what to say. And it's just kind of one of those things where you're like, this sort of loses a little bit of the cool factor when you see everything that goes on behind the scenes all the time. So with that being said, though, ICAST is still one of my top two most look forward to weeks of the year. It's ICAST and the Bassmaster Classic. Those are my two favorite things all year long. ICAST is one of those places where even if you do start to get a little jaded and you start to go, you know what? Yeah, it's not quite as cool year 4 and 5 and 6 and 7. And yes, it's getting a little bit smaller every year. And there are companies that aren't going anymore and all that stuff. It's still one of the only places in the world where you can go and touch and feel and look at that much fishing gear under one roof. And for someone like me that loves fishing gear and loves fishing in general and is not as in the industry as a lot of the people in that room, it's still a very, very cool week for me. But it's also probably the most stressful week of the year in terms of Tackle Talk because I have like a day and a half to turn around a 3.5 hour episode. And of that day and a half that I have to turn it around, most of that time is spent on planes and in the airport and all that kind of stuff. I don't really have a lot of time to get that episode out that next Tuesday, and it is an all-nighter basically that night to try and get it done, but it's worth it every single year. I love being able to kind of give you guys this sort of fly on the wall feel where, hey, I don't get to go to ICAST, I can't go to ICAST, but I feel like I know what happened this year by sitting here and listening to this episode. You know me, I am not a 3-hour episode guy by any means, but that is the one time a year where I feel like it is warranted. So I feel like that's kind of my overall thoughts on ICAST. All right, next one here says Megabass baits. Okay, I'll start with the good, I guess. I would say, and this is, cliche, but the Megabass 110 is probably the best line of jerk baits in the world, at least from what I've used. And I'll go even further to say that the Megabass 110 Plus 1 Junior is one of the best jerk baits in the industry just by itself. I think the 110 Plus 1 Junior is my favorite out of all of the 110 series of jerk baits that Megabass makes. But the whole 110 line is great. They're pricey and the bills break a little bit too easy, but other than that, it's a great line of jerk baits and it is the gold standard for a reason. Some other baits that are kind of cool, the Karashi is a little bit of a sleeper bait. You've got the Dark Sleeper, which is great, obviously. The little Griffin crankbaits are kind of cool. The Sleeper Gill is trash. The Sleeper Craw is okay, but it's not my favorite. I think the Respect series and how they drop those colors and people go nuts for them is a little insane. I think they've kind of got people right by the you-know-what, and they know it, and so they go, watch this. I can drop a all-black jerkbait. There's nothing special to it except I'm going to call it Respect Series 89217 or whatever, and people will go nuts for it. They've had some ugly Respect Series colors that have come out, and they're just these limited runs where it's just a color of the whole, like the popular baits. So the 110, the 110 Plus 1, the Pop Max, all those type of stuff where they'll come out with a color that's like limited edition or whatever, and they drop them, I don't know, it seems like every month or so that they'll have a new Respect Series color come out that they just make for one limited run, and then they drop it and people go bonkers for it. They try and flip them on the internet, and you'll see them bought for $25 and then listed for $49 on eBay within 30 minutes, like that type of stuff. I think it is just insane. I've seen very, very few Respect Series colors that I have been like, ooh, I want to go pick that up. I think I have maybe 2 out of the I don't know, 4 years that I've been watching Respect series colors come out. So yeah, not my thing on the Respect series. I know some people love them. It's not me. I also think the Pop Max might be the most overrated popper on the market. I don't think it's anywhere near as good as half of the poppers that I have in my box. It's not one of my favorites. I think just overall, Megabass, they make very good baits, but only a few of them are worth the crazy hype that the brand gets as a whole. All right, next topic here says Redcrest. Redcrest. Ooh, I don't want to be overly negative on this one, but I do have some thoughts here, I think, on Redcrest. So, first off, I think Major League Fishing has done a lot of good the past 2 years, but especially this past year with everything they've done with like the sonar rules. I think were great. Their schedule choice, I think, is great. Their broadcast has made a lot of strides. The one thing that I think they still need to figure out is Redcrest, because it's supposed to be their version of like the Bassmaster Classic. And if we're being honest, it's not even in the same stratosphere as the Bassmaster Classic. The Redcrest Expo is not anywhere near the Classic Expo. The weigh-in at the Classic is in a darn arena. That is not happening at Redcrest, even for like the announcement or the trophy presentation. There's a much smaller crowd for that trophy presentation. Major League Fishing, I think, just needs to do something to boost the prestige of Redcrest somehow. And I don't know how you do that. That's way easier said than done for me to sit here in this empty room and tell you that you need to up the prestige of your top tournament of the year. I don't know how you do that, but there's just something about Redcrest where it doesn't feel as important as something like the Bassmaster Classic. The Classic is the pinnacle of tournaments all year long. People look forward to it. It is the one thing that everybody wants to win and for their legacy and everything over on the Bassmaster side. Redcrest on the Major League Fishing side just kind of feels like another one of their challenge cups or another one of these just bonus tournaments that they do a year. It doesn't feel like it's like the big thing that everybody is trying to win, and the fanfare around it, I think, reflects that. So I don't know how you do it, but I think that is the one thing that Major League Fishing does need to work on is Redcrest somehow. Okay, the next topic here says protection while fishing. There's a lot of ways you can go with that. I don't know what you mean by protection. I know what popped into my mind at first, and this might not be what you meant by this. You might have meant something totally different, like bug spray or making sure you don't get poison ivy or something. When I saw protection while fishing, I thought that meant like protecting yourself while you are out there and making sure that you're not like, getting robbed or mugged or people aren't doing, whatever to you. That's how I took that. And maybe that's just because I live in Dayton, Ohio, and that's one of the first things that I think of. But yeah, if we want to talk about like actual protection for what I do while I'm fishing, I think it is kind of important, but I guess it depends on where you live. So I know this is a family-friendly show. I don't know everybody's stances on things or whatever, and I know there are kids listening, I'm sure. So all I will say is I do carry when I go out at night in sketchy areas, especially like downtown around here and places where you just run into some interesting folks late at night. I do have something with me to protect myself. And if you don't want to go that far, then a lot of people will probably at least carry around like a pocket knife or something, just something that you have in case something were to happen. I mean, I don't like to talk about this stuff, but I've had 2 instances since I've started fishing where I'm glad that I had some sort of protection with me. I'll leave it at that. Those aren't really stories for this show. And again, we're a very family-friendly show, but there have been times where I'm glad that I had something with me. And if you fish in sketchy places, I think protecting yourself is important. Now, that's regardless of how you choose to do that. There are a lot of different ways that you can quote-unquote protect yourself. That could be something like, mace or pepper spray or something like that. It's unfortunate to have to think about, but it does happen out there. Now, I should also say, hopefully, 99% of the time that people are out there fishing, this isn't an issue because you are not out there in the middle of the night or you're not out there in super sketchy areas. But for us, like we night fish sometimes and there's a lot of urban fishing around here. So when you're walking under, pitch black overpasses at midnight in downtown Dayton, Ohio, it's not exactly the friendliest situation sometimes. So I don't know if that's what this meant, but that's how I thought of it, as protection while fishing. And the last topic here for rapid fire today, this is kind of an interesting one. It says fishing memorabilia. That's a weird one because I feel like fishing does not have a lot of memorabilia. A very little amount of memorabilia considering how big fishing is, I think, and how big memorabilia is in other sports and other activities. So like me, I'm a baseball guy. I work for a baseball team for my regular job. I love baseball. Memorabilia is such a big part of baseball, and it's kind of interesting to see how it's not a big part of fishing. Two of which that come to mind right away would be like game-used memorabilia and then the baseball card side of things, both of which would be really cool to see in fishing. I think they used to have fishing cards back in the day. I've got one right beside me, so actually I know that they used to have fishing cards. I've got one of Rick Clunn that's right over here on the shelf with like all of my little fishing stuff that I have. So I know they made them at some point. I would love to see them bring that back. If you had like an Elite Series, trading card pack or something, that would be so cool because not only could you collect them, but kids could take them to the ramp, at these events and get the anglers to sign their cards and all that kind of stuff. I think that would be very, very cool. You could also dip your toe into the game used side. Now, I don't know if you call it game used, but like event used or tournament used or things like that. Again, I'm surprised this isn't bigger already, but can you imagine if there was like a Bassmaster Authentics or Major League Fishing Authentics, similar to how there's like MLB Authentics? So if you go to a Reds game here, Cincinnati Reds game, there's a whole shop there called Reds Authentics where they sell game-used items from the Cincinnati Reds. So you can go in there, you can get game-used jerseys, you can get game-used hats, you can get game-used bats, you can even buy baseballs used at certain games. And the baseball on the case will tell you what that baseball is from. So it will say, like Hunter Green, ball in the dirt, 3-0 count to Andrew McCutcheon or whatever it may be. It will give you the history of that baseball that you are buying. I think that could be really cool in fishing. Can you imagine if you could buy like a Gerald Swindle tournament used crankbait or the Mooch Minnow that, Jacob Wheeler won his last tournament on or whatever. You could get really cool with some of that. Some tournament winning baits, some baits that were used by that angler during a win, some baits that were used by that angler during like special events. So one of the guys had a century belt at Lake Fork and you could get one of the baits that he used to catch 100 pounds at Lake Fork, things like that. I think that could be really cool for the people that are really into collecting things. Now, that's not 100% my cup of tea, but I could see where that would be interesting. I've got a couple things. If you want to talk about fishing memorabilia, right over here to the left of me, I do have that Rick Clunn trading card just because I think it looks cool. I've also got a Rick Clunn signed Labina Lures Rico, his 50th anniversary Rico from the Bassmaster Classic. I've got that over there. I also have two signed hats. I have one signed by Bill Dance and one signed by Jimmy Houston. Both of those are pretty special to me because those are two guys that I loved watching, as I started learning more and more about fishing, and we've had both of them on the show, and those have been really cool memories for us. So I have two signed hats from both of those guys, absolute legends over there. So yeah, I have a little bit of memorabilia, I guess like 2 or 3 things, nothing crazy, but I think it would be really cool if fishing would sort of embrace the fanfare of memorabilia, whether that is used items or whether that's trading cards or things like that. I think there's definitely a market there, and I think you could make some money if they did it right. All right, everybody, that is today's episode, a really quick episode. Again, coming off a holiday weekend, I just wanted to make sure you had something waiting for you on Tuesday as you are probably on your way back to work now after enjoying Labor Day. I hope you guys had a great, safe holiday. If you want to get a hold of us, it's tackletalkpodcast.com. You can submit a mailbag question for your chance to be heard on an upcoming episode. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at Tackle Talk Podcast. Go find us on YouTube at Tackle Talk Podcast, and we will see you right back here next Tuesday for another brand new episode of Tackle Talk.
Thank you for listening to the Tackle Talk Podcast. Tackle Talk is produced by Andrew Hayes. Copyright 2019. For more, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.